Let's move on to our political panel right now. I'm bringing from Washington, D.C., David Mercer, former National Finance Director with the Democratic Party, and Bradley Blakeman, former Deputy Assistant to President Bush. Gentlemen, the State Department denies this, but it really looks like, particularly if you look at James Rosen reports, that the State Department made an effort early on to make sure that this came before the public as something other than a terrorist attack, something other than al-Qaeda-linked violence against Americans abroad. So let me first start with you, David. What would be the impact politically for Hillary Clinton?
Well, just as the impact has been from a political standpoint, aside from Susan Rice, which her being a potential candidate for Secretary of State and an appointment there where the Republicans came hard at her and what she had done on the Sunday talk shows prior to the year. I am not sure that it will amount to much. You know, we've seen through various sources, namely Tunzing, who represents one of the whistleblowers, claim that there was a Petraeus Benghazi connection with regard to his recent resignation, which turned out not to be the case. And secondly, what we need to also put in the context of all this is that, when it came to enhancing security around embassies around the world, it was the very Republicans that are launching these rumors who voted no in enhancing security and providing the funds to do so at embassies across the world or across the globe.
We don't control.
And so, with them voting no on one hand and then asking what happened with security lapses on the other, seems to be talking out of both sides of your mouth. And I think that's what will be the ultimate conclusion in all of this, as we've seen before.
Mike. All right, so I get two points from what you do. Hang on one second. So I get 2 points from what you're saying. You're saying that the accusers lack credibility and that the Republicans, in their criticism, they lack credibility because they voted down measures that could have financed more enhanced security. Accurate?
Well, we'll see about the credibility of the whistleblowers, but the point that I'm trying to make and to convey to the audience and the viewers is that, the very congressmen, Chaffetz and others, who are talking about security and whether or not state was responsive, it was State Department that went to the very Chaffetzes of the world asking for funding for security and upgrading the security, which was denied. They voted no for it.
Not specifically to Benghazi.
Got it.
The fact of the matter is,
to embassies around the world.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on. Wait. Let's get Bradley in here. Dave,
sure. The fact of the matter is,
shaking your head, Bradley?
That it's discretionary. The funding of where needed funds need to go to secure our consulates and embassies. This consulate should have never, ever been open because it lacked the kind of security that was needed in setbacks and construction and personnel and other things.
And votes no for funding.
No, it's up to the Secretary of State. Either she's incompetent or willful malfeasance on the attack in Benghazi. I was on Fox News on 9/11/12. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that a film that nobody had seen in this part of the world somehow spurred the violence that we saw. And then they tried to tell us it was a peaceful demonstration that gone awry. People don't bring RPGs to a peaceful demonstration and have waves of attack that kill our ambassador and kill other American personnel and trash and burn our consulate.
Well, everything we have seen to this point is not consistent with the idea that this was a peaceful demonstration that just got out of hand. And the one thing, and I talked with Judge Napolitano about this a little bit, and I'll talk with you guys more from a political standpoint, it just doesn't seem that the risk of the cover-up is worth the political benefit. The administration could have taken another tack if it means the president's re-election. They could have said, you need a strong commander-in-chief at a time like this. So why did they go the route of what appears now, particularly if you look at James' report, to be a pretty willful cover-up? Brad.
Well, look, Mike, it's like every scandal here in Washington. Generally speaking, the cover-up is worse than the crime, but not in this instance. The crime was worse than the cover-up. The fact is Americans are dead, but it didn't meet politically the president's narrative that Osama's dead, al-Qaeda is dead as well. Well, Osama may have been dead, but al-Qaeda was alive and well and attacking our consulate and our personnel in Benghazi. And weeks before, months before a presidential election, they did not want a terrorist attack on their watch. And what did they do? They covered it up and tried to snow the American people and then put Rice on TV because Clinton didn't want any part of this thing, and she goes on and lies to the American people and says that this was because of film, and everybody knows today that was an outrageous lie.
We also know, and what wasn't
David?
covered in James's report is Petraeus's testimony also before Congress, in which he stated that it was known now as a terrorist attack, that they did not want to tip the hand to Al-Qaeda or any other elements that were part of that attack to tip them off to the fact that they were onto them. So there are a lot of elements that we'll hear in the hearings, hopefully, and those kinds of pieces of information are very important for how this was characterized and presented to the American public and how it's unfolding in the future.
Now, the hearings on Wednesday, Chairman Issa is going to chair these meetings. He's no stranger to the camera. He does like to stir the pot, and he likes to get some controversy going. But we're going to hear from Mark Thompson, the former U.S. Marine, who said, among other things, at least through his lawyer, that he was subject to threats and intimidation as a result of this. So when that happens and when that comes out of his mouth, I'll start with you again, Brad. What is the political fallout?
I think that it is very damaging, and I think the next step would be to call for a special prosecutor. As Judge Napolitano correctly pointed out, it's not in the president's desire to have his Justice Department investigate this matter. So you got to take it out of their hands, get a special prosecutor who then is charged not with direction from Eric Holder, but basically they're their free agent to represent the American people. That's what needs to be done here. And let the chips fall where they may. I think after that testimony and the testimony of the other whistleblowers, then there'll be a call for a special prosecutor that gets it out of control of the administration.
David, is a special prosecutor an overreach?
I think it is an overreach and customary to Republicans shooting first and then asking questions later. I think that what we'll find with this testimony is the same thing as I had mentioned earlier with Tunsing's allegation that the Petraeus affair had something to do with Benghazi and a cover-up there. Again, we found no evidence of that, and that is now a dead issue, and we're moving on. And again, I would urge all voters and the public to go and look at the voting record of those who will be pushing on this hearing who voted no for security to be enhanced at embassies around the world. It's not a red herring, it's a fact. It's a fact.
It has nothing to do with Benghazi.
It does have to do with Benghazi and other embassies around the world.
Come on.
All right, I want to move on, but I want to ask you both for a I want to move on, but I want to ask you one question before we do, and give me a quick answer. Hillary Clinton, is her goose cooked? Is she done because of this?
No.
I think she has serious trouble.
That is a quick answer.
She has serious trouble in the future, just about what we know now.
Yeah, just as much as Romney was going to,
We're not talking
from
about
all
Romney.
the projections, was going to win in a landslide, which we heard many commentators say, who we don't hear much from now, but he was going to win by a landslide, and that didn't happen.
All right, let's move on to another subject. Immigration reform is going to come up again. It failed in 2007. It seems to me, and here's my analysis that I'll fling out there. It's going to come down to two things. It's going to come down to cost and Marco Rubio. David, start with you again.
Well, going with what we have now, the costs are extraordinary to us, and deportation almost amounts to $23,000 a person that is deported. That racks up a lot of costs. If you find a pathway to citizenship, fix a broken system, then we can harness the energies of all immigrants that have come to this country to add to tax rolls, to add to GDP, and I think time is come where we need to fix the system, as Rubio has stated, and other Republicans and Democrats have stated, and I think we will get immigration reform. And if we don't get immigration reform, we've already seen going from Bush to McCain to now Romney, the polls or the vote for Republicans among Hispanics has gone down nearly 20 points. They can't afford not to fix this system, and it's high time that they began to do so.
Now, Brad, at a time when you're trying to decrease unemployment, are you going to allow more people, are you going to attract more people over the borders and get more people filling up jobs?
Well, look, we have this is a two-pronged approach to immigration reform. One is fairness, and the other is cost. And I think that certainly it's not going to come down just to Marco Rubio, because there's an old 60s song, a handful of senators don't pass legislation. This is going to take the full House and the full Senate in order to come to grips with this. We've seen the gangs of senators and congressmen really don't have the kind of effectiveness they thought they had when they're trying to sell a package to their constituents in the House and the Senate. So we certainly have to have a pathway to citizenship. We have to secure our borders. We have to have tax reform with regard to illegal immigration and what their costs are going to be to become citizens if they choose. So this is a complex problem. But again, the Democrats give us a 4,000-page bill. The Pelosi rule, well, we got to pass it to figure out what's in it. We've been down that road before.
This is Rubio's bill.
We need separate bills, in my opinion, that deal with the problem in the aggregate and not cumulative.
If I might,
no, it doesn't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be a conservative versus. It doesn't seem to be a conservative versus liberal thing that much, particularly when you've got Marco Rubio in the forefront and you've got Grover Norquist saying ultimately you'll save money. The problem is if you get any kind of wobbliness at all out of Marco Rubio, all the conservatives are going to jump ship, right, David?
That is what is being projected, but we've seen Rubio reinforce his position that we need immigration reform, that we need to fix this system. So you don't see any wavering at this point from Rubio, and hopefully we can move this ball down the court. And you also see an issue that got in the way of immigration reform, that being border control, kind of be marginalized because we have increased the number of border agents, we have increased the apprehensions, we have increased deportations, and so securing our border has been on the uptick. So that no longer serves as a precursor now to immigration reform. We've addressed that issue, so you can't sit on that and then do nothing on immigration reform.
You've addressed it, but you haven't solved it. We have a Secretary of Homeland who can't even give us a metric of what a secure border should be. When she was asked by the House, well, what would you be satisfied with? Is it 90%? Is it 70%? She couldn't answer the question. How is that even possible? So a secure border has not been established by our country, and we're a long way to fixing our border problem.
I'll put it this way. A more secure border has been established.
There you go. All right. Bradley Blakeman, David Mercer, thanks for your time, and we're going to be back in
Pleasure.
just a minute with discussion about the